Hey everybody, welcome to season 4 of What's IGN Crashing On. I'm Karen Walby Solomon and I'm your host, and we're here to talk about what's hot in pop culture. Welcome to episode 6 of What's IGN Crashing On. This week on the show, we'll be talking about Euphoria Season 2, the popular Sam Levinson show on HBO starring Zendaya as a drug addict Rue and her friends and a family around her. So we're going to be going a bit deeper into themes and thoughts about this season. And to do that, I'm joined by our old friend, old as in time on the podcast, not in age, Sloan, who started watching Euphoria for the first time this year and caught up in season 1 and season 2. So hi Sloan, welcome to the podcast again.
Hi, thanks for having me. I am also old chronologically, so you can call me old.
Also, we have joining us for the first time, Keenan. Keenan has been watching Euphoria from the beginning. And she's very well known on Twitter and for her opinions on many TV shows like Game of Thrones and especially now F1. But say hi, Keenan.
That's embarrassing. Hi, everybody. I've been watching Euphoria for forever, since it started. Invested, emotionally, physically. I wake up on Mondays early, getting ready, excited for Euphoria.
But that's the thing about the show. Even when it's bad, it's really addictive. I think for the last, how many episodes? 8, 9 episodes? There's 9 weeks. I was in Euphoria land. I was just thinking about it. I was laughing about it. I was rewatching scenes. And I think that that's part of what makes the show what it is.
I'll be honest and say that a week ago, not that I say a week ago, but a few weeks ago, we put a Christmas bed down, for one episode of Euphoria, just to sit and watch in our lounge. And it's literally not left since. It's been 8 weeks of a Christmas bed just lying in our lounge.
For me, I wouldn't say that I was never into Euphoria. I just didn't get the hype around it. And then everyone was like, oh my God, Euphoria season 2. And the only reason why I started watching was because I don't like being left out. Everyone's having a conversation about something and I don't know what you guys are talking about. That's why I started watching Euphoria. So when Keenan started watching season 2, when she watched the first episode, I was like, okay, I'm going to watch the first 8 from season 1. And then hopefully by next week, I'll catch up to where you are because I don't want to be left out. But I will say one of the best decisions because I think that I obviously wasn't there for the first season of Euphoria and what the chatter on social media was, but I was watching the chatter on social media and on Twitter around the second season, and I was like, oh wow, people are actually very, very invested in this. And I was like, hey, something for me to feel like I'm a part of something as well.
And I think that's got a lot to say about the old school model of TV. Because, with Netflix and with the other streaming services, we would binge watch all 10 episodes. And you don't know where everybody else is on the spectrum. Somebody could be on episode 7, someone's in episode 1. But with this, everybody is watching at the same time in real time. And it does feel like a community because you're all reacting to the same things, you're crying over the same things, you're getting angry over the same things, and it gives you a sense of being part of something more, which is great.
I absolutely agree with that. Not just with Euphoria specifically, but I read a lot of articles on Deadline and stuff, and there's been many conversations with regards to the distribution of shows because of how easy it is to just put something online, all 10 episodes, and people consume it, and then the conversation moves on. And if you look at a show like The Mandalorian, they said the reason why they went week to week is because it allows you that opportunity to have people talk about the episode for 5, 6, 7 days before the next one comes. It's that water cooler conversation. And that's what builds momentum for the show. Because if you drop something like Netflix style, all 10 episodes at the same time, someone will watch it within a Saturday afternoon and then move on with their lives. And then there's no conversation around that. So I absolutely agree that one of the best things about Euphoria is that the episode will drop on the Monday, and then for the rest of the week, shit is so tense online because we want to know what is coming next.
So we should say like the first season aired in 2019, which is about what, 3 years ago? And the second season was delayed because of COVID. And that's when Sam Levinson and Zendaya made that not very good movie, Malcolm and Marie. But so now season two has come out and it had been delayed. So obviously, like people are like, oh, when is it coming out? But also, one thing that I will say is that it didn't lose momentum. Like people were still excited for it. Like I think that like if something comes out so long ago, you sort of kind of forget what has happened. But yeah, I think that that also adds to it.
What I wanted to say was that TV model of actually releasing an episode every week is very reminiscent and nostalgic of like our childhood. Because I remember, like now, you could just go on Netflix; they'll release like every single episode. We'll binge watch. We spend hours watching like one series, like 7 episodes or whatever. But I think for me, it was actually quite refreshing to have to wait for an episode. Like, and I think that excitement, obviously,
Mm.
when I started watching Game of Thrones, people would get really upset with me because you wake up at like 3 o'clock in the morning to tweet about Game of Thrones. But I think for me with Euphoria, because it's obviously it's not Game of Thrones, but it was so nice to just have a show where you would wake up in the middle of the night to watch an episode because you didn't want to
Mm,
miss.
yeah.
Obviously the conversation, and you didn't want to get tied up in the spoilers. So I think for me it was very nostalgic in that, like, it was really lovely to be able to watch an episode once a week instead of just like binge watching the whole thing through.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
I was literally just going to say, or echo what Keenan said with regards to, obviously, I'm not going to reveal my age, but when we grew up, or when I grew up, it was a case of, because none of these streaming sites existed, you couldn't just go on Pirate Bay and download what you wanted in my day. So you had to watch things week to week. And I think that that absolutely does build momentum for whatever you are watching. So for me, it was just almost watching people lose their minds waiting for the next episode to show up. And I was like, oh wow, this is actually like a very, very big part of like the internet conversation right now. Like people are actually invested in the show. Because when Keenan suggested, like, oh, you should watch Euphoria, I was like, I'm not gonna watch teenagers do drugs. I've seen teenagers do drugs. That was when I was an actual teenager. I don't think anything here is for me. And then I actually watched it and I was like, as much as the episodes and the show itself is so stunning, the conversation and seeing how people react to what they are seeing is so, so, so mind blowing for me, because it's like, oh wow, this is what you think, this is what you think. And like, you'll see the different sides of where people fall with regards to who they think is the good characters or the bad characters, who they stand, who they don't stand. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, this is what we've been missing, because, like I said, if you go Netflix model, someone will watch something within a weekend, and then there is no conversation about it. And I think one of the best things, or one of the things that got me excited to watch Euphoria, is that there's a conversation behind this. So you can watch the episode and immediately go online and see, like, oh, people are reacting in the same way. Like, people actually agree with how I perceived the episode. And it's people like all across the globe.
mm. Keenan?
Oh, I just wanted to say, just to echo what Sloan was saying with regards to relating to the episode, because what I found during those 8 weeks, when everyone we were all watching, we were tweeting, we were saying how we feel, siding with characters, very stanship. behavior, very Bob of all of us, defending our characters for their lives. But like, I think for me, what was really fascinating about the whole situation is that people were kind of saying like, oh, it doesn't feel realistic, like teenagers doing drugs and going out and doing all these strange things. And for me, that was such a weird thing, because I was like, when I remember my teenagehood, that like specific area like of my life, we were going out, people were doing drugs, people were being fucking teenagers. And it's so weird for people to kind of say like, oh, this is so unrealistic, teenagers would never. And I'm like, have you literally met teenagers? Have you been a teenager? Like, that was probably the most invincible time of my life. Like, and so whether or not I was doing it or other people were doing it, and seeing other people, just like live their life with reckless abandon, like, it was very difficult for me to watch people was like, oh, this feels very unrealistic. And I'm like, maybe I just grew up differently, and we had seen different things when we were growing up. But it was very weird to see people go like, oh, they don't get it, like it's very funny or it's very strange. Whereas I was like, oh, that sounds like my neighbor across the road, or like two houses down. There could be someone who was selling drugs, doing drugs, or whatever. And like, as a teen myself, that sense of invincibility was just unmatched.
I just want to get on to season 2 and talk about, what did you guys think about the season in comparison to season 1, and, as a show as a whole. So I don't know, Sloan, do you want to go first?
So for me, I obviously watched season 1 at the time that everyone was starting season 2, because I was like, FOMO, I don't want to be left out. I need to know what people are talking about. And one of the things that I said to Keenan was, for me personally, it feels like visually the show is absolutely stunning. They shoot it so well. The like art direction and the cinematography that goes into that is absolutely beautiful. But for me, it's like there's not enough actual content, or not enough actual like storyline or dialogue, where it doesn't feel like, as someone who watches as much TV as I do, I'm so used to things being like driven by words, and this is like so visually driven. They give you the bare minimum when it comes to talking. And I saw online that a lot of people were saying that, oh, season 2 was not as good as season 1, and I'm like, I personally can't comment on that, because for me it just felt like I watched 16 episodes of a show. There was no season 1 and season 2. But for me, season 2, I honestly thought that they did a very good job. Obviously, when we got to the end of the season, there were definitely like so many things that it felt like, why did we not tie up all of these loose ends? But that's also when I ask about the loose ends and the cliffhangers and stuff. That's only because, as someone who is as invested in TV as I am, I'm always so worried that a show would get cancelled. So for me, it's like, please answer all of the questions just in case there's no next season. And people were like, with the lorry thing, like the 10K suitcase worth of drugs and all of those things. I'm like, I get that you guys were looking for answers to these questions, but also understand that maybe that will be answered next season then. Like, people were like, oh, they dropped the ball on this. And for me, it was like, there's another season coming, so hold on. Maybe they are going to resolve these plot points in the next season, or maybe they're going to carry this over and cover it over a few episodes next season. And people just wanted finality to so many different storylines. And for me, like, as soon as you reach a point where all of these loose ends are being tied up, all of these questions are being answered, then what's the point of the next season? Where do we go from here? You know?
I just want to obviously just say, like, almost add on to what Sloan was saying regarding the narrative visually versus the narrative in a dialogue sense. And I think for me, like, I that's my job. My job is I'm an art director for a living, right? So my job is conceptualization and like making things look beautiful. And so watching Euphoria for me is like a treat. It's always fucking, it's gorgeously filmed. The lighting is beautiful. The frames, the stills, when they focus on a character, the lighting is exquisite. It creates that emphasis in terms of what we're hearing and what we're saying. It drives the point home. So even when we don't get like a lot of dialogue, for me visually, I feel as an art director, I'm fed. Like, I am having a fantastic time. And I think, I'm not trying to defend Sam Levinson, because, we've heard all the things we've heard about him this season. And I'm not trying to defend the show in any kind of way. But just as a viewer, as an art director, like, it was so fantastic to watch a show where, for the first time in a long time, not the narrative was, that wasn't the focus, but rather the visual was the focus. And as someone who loves visuals, who loves, breathes, talks, teaches visuals, it was really fantastic to kind of like absorb all of that, and how people kind of like interpreted that to the on their own. And like, even when people were upset about how things ended, and the narrative, there were a lot of loose ends, and like things weren't tied up. Some things just never went anywhere, and I absolutely understand that. Like, obviously, like, we want to know, we want closure. But I think because us as viewers, we're so used to being so overly involved, because we have access to actors and the story and the narrative, and the actual show, we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot. We don't allow ourselves to enjoy anything just for what it is. We kind of want to control the narrative. We want to work it in a way that allows us to absorb it, so that we can kind of understand, instead of just sitting back, allowing the show to happen, and just taking in what I'm seeing and then moving from there. But like now, it feels like I have to, I get mad because I don't want this, and this. I'd rather prefer this, and this. And that's obviously, internet age and social media, because, Euphoria is one of the most talked about shows on social media. When, you wake up and that's the first thing you see on a Monday morning. You see all the tweets and stuff. So for me, I kind of like, I want to say it's kind of cool that we don't have that say anymore. Like, it's fun for me to watch a show build a narrative, not where I'm screaming at the internet and then the writer does what I say, because I'd rather not face the reality.
I agree with you guys, but I also disagree. I think that Euphoria has some aspects that it does very well. Like, as you've said, the visuals excellent, the cinematography stunning as always. Marcel Rev, he's just so good at his job. But I do think that what failed is the storytelling aspect, because I felt like it just didn't seem like there was a clear thread throughout the season. And especially when it comes to all the characters, like when season 1 was introduced, it was introduced as an ensemble show. And then I feel like Sam Levinson, as sole writer and director, just sort of like, he just sort of lost the ball when it came to some of the characters. And he went on a tangent with some and forgot about the others. And it's okay to focus on certain characters, but you got to kind of like prune the hedges. So you have to kind of make it make sense why the others aren't part of the story, or in that case. And I feel like he didn't do that. He kind of let things fall, which is where writer's room comes in. And what writers' rooms tend to do is they focus on specific storylines, on specific characters, and they just sort of like keep things in line with the main storyline. And I think that Sam Levinson got a bit lost in his own source, and he didn't kind of focus on that. And that, like, it's okay to focus on the visuals and it's okay to focus on everything else, but that's why he needs help. That's what I'm saying. And the things like the visuals, the things like the music, all of that stuff was brilliantly done. And I've said this many times, but I think episode 5 of the show, when Ru was like going through like her lowest low, I think was a perfect episode of television, and it was done so well. And the story, the visuals, the music, everything was done brilliantly. So yeah, so I feel like whereas season 1 seemed to have very strong focus, season 2 faltered. And why season one worked well was because they focused on a specific character each episode. But the problem was because they introduced so many of those characters in season one, they couldn't maintain it in season two. And that's what I struggled with. And with regards to the plot holes, I don't think it was important for them to sort of like give closure for all of the storylines they introduced in season two. Like that's not important, especially because we know there's a season three. But in order to tell a concise story within one season, they need to kind of sort of hint that there's going to be more coming in season three, would just give us like a little bit. Like there should have been just a little reminder about the Lori situation in the finale. There should have been what is happening with Maddie and with that Samantha lady and with the whole where's she leaving to? Why did she into that? It's just like a little bit of sort of like not full closure, but closure as you ended the season within the last two episodes. So that's sort of like how I feel like some things are done well and some things weren't done well. And the solution is that is just to get more people on board and just better organization. But yeah, I think we should focus a little bit on our main character, Ju. So what did you guys think about her journey this season? I mean, when we met her, she had a relapse from because of like the whole situation with Jules, and then by the time we left her, she was clean. What did you guys think about Drew's journey this season?
Okay, so I have to say, like, I feel people have been extremely harsh towards Rue. People are like, oh, she's a terrible person. She makes awful decisions. And, she only thinks about herself. And, she's just terrible because everyone loves to say, like, everyone loves to hate on Rue. It's easy. That's the easy character to hate because, they make awful decisions. And when I say awful decisions, they make decisions that you as an adult, you look back on that and you think to yourself, like, how could you do that to your people? How could you do that to your friends? How could you do that to the people closest to you? And I think what a lot of people forget is that Rue is an addict. And people forget that very quickly. And like it's been very interesting for me as a viewer to watch how people treat addicts over these last 8 weeks. People kind of treat addicts like they are disgusting and awful and they terrible human beings, when in actual fact, like addiction is a disease. So for me, watching someone go through that, watching Rue go through that, she's just going by the rules of like what an addict would do. She's not being an awful person because she wants to be an awful person. Addiction is ruling a decision that she's making. And then on top of all of that, that's literally a child. Like in my eyes, that's a child. Like, we extend grace to everything and everyone all the time, and now everyone's watching a child be an addict and everyone's like, that's a shit person. And I'm like, guys, like that's so weird. When you look at a child and you're like, how can you even look at a child who is addicted to drugs and try to bash them? Like that's a 15-year-old, but like that's a 17-year-old child. They don't know any better. Your frontal lobe is not even developed. So how can you look at that? And I know it's awful because, we've all like, and some of us have actually had real life experience with drug addicts. But I think that's where my sympathy comes from, where my empathy comes from is I know what it is to know a drug addict and know what it is to watch their family have to go through that, and my own family. So for me, watching how people kind of discarded Rue and like kind of like shat her away because, she's being an awful person was very hard for me because, addiction is a disease, and even worse so, that's a child. I always have to extend grace for a child. So I don't know why people aren't extending that grace. Like it's awful. The decisions are bad and, things are tough, but that's a child at the end of the day.
For me, like, just to touch on what Keenan was saying, like, it was so wild just being on the internet and seeing people react to the show and just be like, oh my god, none of this is realistic. I'm like, babe, have you ever sat in the trap house? Like, I have seen men fucking, sorry for my language, but I have seen men make bricks of cocaine. Like, I have actually been in a trap house. Like, these things do actually happen to teenagers. And when you look at Rue, I don't want to say that Rue is a victim of her circumstance, but look at everything that she's gone through. Like, if she had never picked up that first crack pipe, everything might be fine. She'd probably just be standing in a hallway crying like Gia. but she touched the duck lolly and she was like, this is for me. And now she's out there doing drugs. And I'm like, this happens in real life, guys. This isn't just television. This actually does happen, not just in an American context, but this happens in our lives as well.
I just wanted to say that, like, what I did enjoy was, especially the last two episodes, just seeing sort of like how Rue was, like the human she was before she was on drugs, and because when we met her, she was already an addict. I don't think we got to see who she was, what she enjoyed, like her opinion on certain things that wasn't affected by drugs. And I'm really glad that towards the end of the season we got to see her in a more healthier, happier way. And I hope that in season 3 that they will show us more of that. But as I said earlier, for me, episode 5 was just brilliant. And I don't know if I've spoken about this on the podcast. I must have. But I am somebody who has lived with an addict, and I just saw it as it like demolished my family, and a lot of my childhood trauma is related to that. And I've written about this before, but I was Gia, and seeing that situation is very triggering, but also it makes me feel seen in a way that a lot of other media has not made me feel seen, because it's so hard when you love somebody to see them going through that. And when they hurt you and when they're being selfish and when the drugs take over, that doesn't diminish the love you have for them. And you still want them to get better and you still want them to have a good life. And I feel like Euphoria just represents so much sympathy for adults that we don't usually get to see in media. And, I'm very glad for that. And I'm glad that Ru's journey has taken us through this.
I just want to touch on what you just said about obviously the addiction part of it. We need to talk about the adults and the parents in the actual show itself, because obviously everyone is obsessed with the teenagers, the kids in the show. It's so interesting to see that everyone who watches the show mainly talks about the characters on the show. And when I say characters, I mean like the teenagers on the show. But I don't think a lot of people actually talk about the adults on the show, specifically talking about Nika King, who plays Rue's mom in Euphoria. And I think that, firstly, she absolutely holds her own every single time she is in a scene
Yes.
and she is going up against Zendaya. And my favorite thing about it is, and if you've ever been in a family or in a situation where you've had to deal with a drug addict or someone dealing with addiction issues, it's obviously very, very hard on the parents as well. And a lot of what the people watch and buy into are the kids on the show. But take a look at everything that Nika King has done this season. I want Nika King to get her flowers for everything that she has done this season on Euphoria, because a lot of what she has done on the show is so, so, so true to what happens in real life. Watching a parent deal with a child struggling with addiction. I've watched that woman go through absolute hell this season dealing with her child. And I don't think enough people are giving her her praise and giving her her flowers. And there was an episode in the season, in season 2, where they were talking about Rue and Rue's addiction and all of those things. It was almost like a moment of like lucidity for Rue. And one of the things that Nika King, or her character Leslie, said to Rue was that if I have to choose between essentially two fucked up kids or one that actually makes it, I'm going to choose the one child that will actually survive all of this. And that's such a difficult thing for not only the character, but for a parent to have to deal with. to say, I have this one child who is dealing with this ugly, ugly demon that is consuming all of our lives. And I have this other child who is not going through that, but everything that happens as a result of that addiction is directly affecting Gia. And she said, Gia's grades are slipping, Gia's doing this, Gia's doing that, Gia's doing that. And Ru was like, I didn't know that any of that happened. And I'm like, babe, that's because you were so consumed in your own little fire that was burning you alive that you did not see that the rest of your family was on fire as well. And Nika King's character literally said, if it comes down to it, I'm going to save one child. I would rather save one and lose one than to lose both kids. And I think like people look at Euphoria and say like, oh, this is a teen show, but pay close attention to what the adults are saying as well, because they are looking at this addiction and at all of what's happening from a different lens. You have to understand that, yes, these are teenagers living the wildest lives, but look at the mom. Not that she doesn't have to be going through this, but she is dealing with so much, and everyone's like, oh, look at Ru, she's a runner, she's a track star out there running through the entire whatever city that they live in. And she was just like, while you are doing all of this wild cuck that you are doing, my other child also needs me. So I think that we need to pay more attention to what the parents are going through as well in the show. And we need to also take that we see on the show and also look at what's happening in our real lives as well and say like, okay, you see kids or teens or whatever age they are dealing with whatever demons they have. Ask the mom, ask the dad, like, are you okay though? Are you dealing with everything? Because everyone's watching the child. No one's actually asking you, are you doing okay? You look like you are dealing with so much.
So we had like two main, well, one main storyline that wasn't true storyline, and that was Cassie and hooking up with Nate, who was Maddie's ex-boyfriend. And then we also had more of an emphasis on Lexi and Fez, who we didn't get to see much in the first season, but they got their own sort of introductions, and they got like a little side maybe romance. So what did I just want to know? I know this is like a big question, but we're going to be going into spoilers. So I think maybe we should just get that off the bat. So Cassie and Maddie have a fight. Lexi has a play where she airs out all their dirty laundry. There's also a side plot where Castor, he sort of like works with the police, and he tries to incriminate Fez, but Ashtray, who is Fez's younger brother, he sort of stabs Castor, and then the police come in and Ashtray gets shot. So there's a whole lot of things happening. So that's kind of what happens in the finale. So I don't. So what is your guys' opinion about either of those storylines? I don't know who wants to go first.
I'm going to jump straight into this. Like we discussed earlier in the show, I obviously only started Euphoria this year, literally a few weeks ago. And I was like, oh my God, I love Cassie. And then the more I watched Cassie's movements, the more I was like, if I were in high school, this is the girl I would fight. I would beat this girl up because all that Cassie does is dumb bitchery. Every decision she makes, every thing that she says to rationalize why she did shitty things, that's dumb bitchery. It's dumb bitchery. And I'm not necessarily saying that Cassie is a bad person, but one thing about Cassie, and I've seen this in real life with people who have done similar things, you aren't taking accountability for what you did. You aren't saying sorry to this person that you hurt because of this thing that you did. All that you are doing is you are saying, I'm doing this, and this is the reason I'm doing this, and this is my justification for this. Like, I want just one episode next season a full, 56 minutes of Cassie just going around the school and around the town and saying sorry to people for the things that she did, because she's moving shady, but she's moving like a damn bitch. And my thing is this: if you want to be the villain, then be the villain. You can absolutely be the person that everyone hates, but then don't still feel like, oh, people are attacking you or people are bullying you for something that you in your heart feel like no was justified. No, dog, you did a shit thing to your friends, to whoever. You did a shit thing. Apologize. Even if you did a horrible thing and you don't feel bad about it, or you feel like fine, you did what you did. If you want to have these relationships with these people in your life, you have to take accountability for that. And obviously, Lexi had this play that she put on where she exposed. Lexi spilled the tea. That's point blank. Lexi spilled the tea. And everyone was like, yes, work. This play is stunning. Even there, I want Lexi to take accountability, because Cassie got on that stage and Cassie was like, oh, look at her putting our lives out there and our dirt out there for everyone to see. And the whole school like enjoyed the play. But at the end of the day, I need people to understand, as much as we love Lexi as a character, Lexi did a shady thing, dog. Like, you cannot go and air people's dirty laundry, even if you do it as a play, as an off Broadway play. You still need to understand that you need to take accountability for this. Was Cassie's reaction in line with what Lexi did? I don't know. I cannot say, because I cannot say how Cassie felt about what happened on that stage. But Lexi got upset. Lexi was like, oh, I'm going to play the victim quickly. And I'm like, babe, yes, you put on a stunning production, but understand that you still put people's dirty laundry out there for everyone to consume like it's fucking a soap opera. You still need to take accountability and say, hey, me as Lexi, I actually did fuck up when I did what I did. You know? And then with regards to the Lexi and Faze thing, I'm not going to say much. All I'm going to say is I am also a girl who loves a drug dealer, so I understand why she would fall for Fesco. So for me, it's like,
Sloan.
you know what, babe? Yes, go for the actual drug dealer.
Sloan lives with me, so Sloan understands when I say, like, it's difficult to watch characters go through what they did and do what they did, because, when I look at that, like, in my head, and that's what I'm saying, like, I'm so sorry I have to say this on your show, like, maybe you can just bleep this out. But in my head, Cassie, Lexi, that's what they are. And the reason I say that is because Sloan will know, because Sloan lives with me. When I say girls like Cassie, they do what they do, they live how they live, and they make their decisions, and they fucking go about their lives and blah 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 blah. It's wonderful. But they don't pay for the consequences of their decisions. It's their friends, and as a friend of someone who is friends to someone like Cassie, or used to be like Cassie, you pay the consequences. You have to take responsibility of the consequences of the actions that they made, right? And then at the same time, you watch Lexi. Everyone's like, oh, Lexi, she's so fucking cool. She did everything. She fucking put her sister on blast, and she did all of this cool things. She fucking wrote a play and all of that. But I think we like to root for the underdog. But I think when we look at them and we unpack those two characters as a whole, they're both shit people. Like, who the fuck is Lexi to stand there and fucking air out her friend's business in the form of a play just because that's how she felt, that's the best way for her to deal with her emotions? Like, how do you look your friends in the eye? Like, fucking Zendaya might have thought, oh, that's wonderful, I had moved on, and maybe I learned something from that. But
Leslie, go to
if
therapy, babe.
That's what I'm saying. Other people might not have thought that way. How, like, who the fuck are you to fuck you? Like, you took the people that you care about, the people that you love, the people that entrusted you with those emotions. You took that and you turned it into a play, right? Fine, all's fair and well. We all love an underdog. Like, oh, she's so cool, she's so sick, she's wearing double collars. You know, she's fucking thrifts. She's a hot bitch. But fun fact about Lexi, she's a how dare she do that to her family, to her sister, to her friends? Who the fuck are you? Just because that's not how they treated you, because, oh, okay, because now you get to say that you are, they never treated you with, popularity. Like, grow the fuck up. So you decided to put them on blast? You decided to air their dirty laundry, and not just dirty laundry, trauma. Trauma. You fucking aired that trauma out like it was two fucking, you bought the 2-for-1 special vest at Woolies. Like, you literally just hung that out there for everybody to see. And, everyone's like, oh, Lexi, she's so cool. And I get that. Like, she was cool. And I love her. But, like, I think the way in which she did that, awful. Because principally, like, as a human being, like, I would never do that. But at the same time, I'm an adult. So it's very different. And that's why I think when people get upset about, and even Cassie, like when I look at Cassie, like Sloan says, like, Cassie, wow, fucking hell, what a dumb bitch. Like, I want to love you, I want to support you, I want to look at you because you are a teenager. Just like I said, Rue is a teenager. That's why Rue made the decisions that they made. They were doing stupid things. And then you look at Cassie and you're like, fuck, that's why you were doing what you were doing. You are a child. That's very, very, very reminiscent of childhood teenage trauma behavior. It all makes sense. And then at the same time, you look at these and like, Cassie, the only difference between you and Rue, and you can even ask Rue, addiction applies differently. But when Cassie's not addicted to anything, when I look at Cassie, I'm just sitting there and I'm like, babe, all I want you to do is choose yourself. Like, whatever this ridiculous nonsense is, choose
I think
yourself.
she's addicted to attention, though.
Absolutely addicted to attention. But that's the problem. Attention is not a drug. It's not in my Aloe book. It doesn't tell me what I need to do to get it.
I watched this very interesting TikTok about friends like Cassie, who they call like narcissistic friends. And, I also try to have a certain amount of grace because, I mean, like as I think was a very important part when Samantha and Maddie were in the pool, and Samantha was like, I also slept with my friend's boyfriend. When you're younger, things are a little bit different because your world becomes just you. But they were talking about like, I just want to say this simply, but like they were basically talking about friends like Cassie, narcissistic-ish friends. What she sees is Maddie's. Maddie has gone through similar issues to her. Maddie had parent problems, Maddie, all of these things. But whereas Maddie came out of it differently to her, and she sees Maddie as perfect, so she tries to emulate Maddie. And that's why she wanted to be with Nate, why she dressed like Maddie, and all that sort of things. But the problem with Cassie is that she seeks her approval out from like outward sources, whereas Maddie gets her approval inward. So that's why she will never kind of measure up to Maddie because of that factor. And she doesn't see that. Maybe because she's a child, but also because she's not willing to look and willing to seek within herself. With regards to the Lexi thing really affected me because as a child, as a younger person, as a writer, I 100% believed that it was my duty to talk out all my shit because that's the only way I'm going to get through it. So I used to write blog posts and stuff, and I used to talk about issues. And when I was confronted by it with my family, I was upset because I was like, this is my way of dealing with things. And how can you tell me what I can't say because this is my story too? And as I grew older, what I realized is there's a way that you handle things that doesn't necessarily have to sort of air out other people's dirty laundries. You can reflect on your own situations and the way that you reacted to things without necessarily bringing in other things. She could have talked about how she felt inferior to her sister without being condescending towards her sister. There was no reason for her to include that whole Ferris wheel thing and stuff like that. There was ways that she could have gone around it. But as an adult, I can see that. And which is why like most people were saying, like, why wasn't there a drama teacher advising her against doing certain things? But as a child, I know I would have written out all that shit. I would have aired out everything. And, you are taught as a writer that, they always tell you write as if your parents are dead, because else you're never going to get to the bottom of your issues if you don't talk about, your shit. But there's a way of going around it, which I think she didn't employ. I just wish like Nate would die and that Cassie and Maddie can sort the shit out. But I don't think that Cassie is at a point with the way her character is written where she is sympathetic, or even like, or she's at the point where she can sort of understand where Maddie is coming from. And I love Maddie, and I'm a stan. As it says in my Twitter thing, like, she's my favorite character, and I will ride or die for her. And then the last point I want to make before we kind of like do our closing thoughts is, I absolutely adore Fez and Lexi. Like, I'm obsessed with them. I love like couples that come out of nowhere that I didn't expect, that are cute, and I think that the slow way that they're building up their relationship is very like very, very cute, and I am such a big fan, and I hope to see more of it in season 3. Let's just do closing thoughts, Keenan, and then Sloan, and then we will end the show.
Okay, so closing thoughts overall. Obviously, we need to get a writer's room outside of Sam Levinson. I think the way he portrays that drug addiction is exquisite. To watch it, to see it, to experience it, to have experienced it in my own life, to watch him direct it and visualize it for me in a way that is so, it's so, oh, guys, I can't explain. Like, as an art director, like to sit there and watch what he's done with addiction, like in a visual way, is stunning. Like, I literally enjoy it so much. And I think that's probably why I have such a, I can excuse a lot of things because in my head, I'm like, oh, like visually, it's beautiful, blah, blah, blah. I do think he needs to get a couple of writers in, and then to watch the characters grow the way they have. Sometimes there's loose plot ends and whatnot and blah blah blah. I'm not going to focus on that too much, but when I watch the characters and the way they've grown, like, I think in my head, most important is, before I start basing and like just getting annoyed at these characters, like Rue's a bad person, Cassie's a bad person, she's a shit person, and like Maddie needs to do this, and like it becomes much more simpler for me to absorb the show and understand the minute I realize that those are teenagers, those are kids, and like I remember what I was like as a teenager, and just watching them navigate that feels very realistic. So when people like get upset and want to fucking punch Cassie in the face, and like trying to drown Maddie and like punch Rue in the chest, all that nonsense, for me as an adult watching kids go through that, like, it feels pretty normal. Like, it's easy for me to accept the narrative because I can understand, and I'm looking at children navigating their way through trauma, like awful trauma. So for me, like, just as an adult, like, I kind of enjoy it only based on the fact, like, it's easy for me to set aside my adult frame of reference. Like, it's easy for me to just watch how kids navigate this life. Their frontal lobes are not developed. They're gonna do what teenagers do. They're gonna do what feels good. So I'm super excited for season 3, and I know season 2 was not the best. Like, it's not definitely not better than season 1. And like I said, Sam Levinson definitely needs to get a couple of writers in that writers' room. But as an art director, just from someone who's a visual point of view, like, and as someone who's experienced and seen drug addiction affect their family, it was stunning.
For me, closing thoughts wise, I'm going to keep it very brief. I'm going to say just a few things. Number one, all of those kids, I want to beat them up for different reasons, but everyone deserves to get their ass handed to them. So if they can find a way to write me into the show, I don't know, 56 minutes of me just punching everyone in the throat, I'd like to see that happen. With regards to the show itself, very excited that I am part of the conversation because it's so wild watching people react to things the way they do. Number three, with regards to the Lexi and Fezco thing, Keenan can vouch for me when I say this because I literally said to Keenan, when I look at Lexi, the first person I think of is Karen. Lexi reminds me so much of you. And I was like,
What?
oh, I wish I could introduce my friend to a drug dealer. Like, I wish I could give her a cute drug dealer
I
boyfriend.
hate that you
But
want
I
this
don't,
for me.
I don't
I
know
hate that
anyone,
you want this for me.
unfortunately. And then,
I'm going through my contact list. I'm looking at my plugs. I'm like, oh my god, she's so cute. She's so sweet. She's so lovely. She doesn't even know how hot she is. I have a drug dealer just in mind.
No, thank you.
absolutely,
No,
I
thank
want,
you.
I want that Fexi for you. And then the last thing that I'm going to say with regards to Euphoria and the hype around it, obviously, as Keenan said, Sam is treading very, very close to Tyler Perry territory with wanting to write everything himself. Like, babe, you need help. Get some people in there to tell the story with you. But at the end of the day, I enjoy it so much because number one, visually stunning. Number two, actually very, very relatable. If you had lived the kind of adolescent life that I have lived, you would understand that this is not fiction. Some people actually do go through these things and deal with these kinds of people in their real life. And my only hope for season 3 is that they bring my girl Lori back, because I don't know if she's going to go and get her 10K herself, or if those Edcon call center agents are going to phone Rue every single day to ask
Edcon.
where's the money. But I need to understand how someone just made it out of a 10K debt without anyone saying anything. Someone needs to come and collect from that family.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining. This was a very insightful conversation. And I'm excited to talk to you guys again after season 3. Me, you can find at Karen Welby on Instagram, at Karen Welbys with an S on Twitter, and sign up for my newsletter, Wildest Dreams, at wildestdreams.substack.com. The podcast can be found at Crushing on Pod on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. You can find us at What's IGN Crushing on YouTube, and you can find more information about this and all our other episodes on our website, crushingonpodcast.com. Send any feedback to mail@crushingonpodcast.com, and you can send us voice notes at +27 78362 2566. Join our Facebook group, Crushing on Club, where we chat about the show, celebrity news, recommendations, the whole shebang. The show is produced by me, Karen, as well as Rebecca Barches and Leanne Phillipson. The show is edited by Rebecca Barches. Our logo was designed by Nathifa Maroof, and the show was created in partnership with IGN Africa. If you like the show, tell everyone that you can, any way that you can. Keep up to date with episodes by subscribing to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please rate and review the episodes on Apple Podcasts, as it helps others to find the show. We'll be back next week with another in-depth conversation with a pop culture lover. See you then.